Hey everyone, I'm John BenderWaffles Aljets, and a little while ago I showed you guys this video where I did a speed development of a map that I submitted for Ramp 2024, which is a major collaborative Doom project where a bunch of people got together and made maps for classic Doom. This project had over 300 maps submitted for it, and myself, I actually submitted 3. In this video, we're going to take a look at the first one that I submitted. One playthrough is going to be your standard ultra-violence playthrough with all the monsters and everything in place. And then one, I'm going to strip away all the monsters and we're just going to go through it bit by bit. And I'll talk you through what I was thinking when I was actually making the map. So without any further ado, let's actually get into it right now. Well, we are here at the start of the level. I have a few things architecturally to talk about, but we will wait until the next run through where we don't have any monsters to talk about that. In this first room here, we have our standard sort of ubiquitous Doom monsters, your zombie men, your shotgunners, and your imps. Fun fact about this level and about all 3 of the levels that I submitted to Ramp, at no point in any of the 3 levels does a standard shotgun spawn naturally in the map. You can only get them off of shotties. There's a secret, spoiler alert, which honestly, I don't ever really see a reason to spawn in a standard shotgun just as a pickup on the map, unless like it's something where like the player gets it immediately and you want them to start with the shotgun. Just because, like, why do that? Just put in a shotgunner. Like, it's fine. They drop shotguns. It's all good. There's our introduction to the Pinky. I'm going to talk a little bit about enemy, like, introductions in a little bit here, but it's something that I do with new enemies. At least I try my best to do with new enemies when I'm designing levels. Going through here, we got the yellow key, so now we're running through, we're gunning. We got another Pinky, we've taken it down. Oh, I ran out of shotgun rounds. How embarrassing. It's okay, because there are shotguns right there. Blasting down our zombie men. We have this nice long hallway to this elevator. I thought about making this elevator not a square. I played around with the pentagon at one point. You might have seen that in the speed development, but ultimately I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go simple because we had a kind of flashy, fancy looking hallway there, so we can go with a square for an elevator. It's fine. Coming down here, we got a Pinky. Blow this Pinky away. Blow that guy away. Goodbye, shotgunners. Now this room, originally this little alcove here was blocked off by a door or by a wall, and it was going to be a monster closet. But then while I was running through, before I had placed down enemies, I hadn't put this wall up yet. And honestly, it did a lot to make the room breathe, like give it space. So I decided, you know what, it doesn't need to be a monster closet. It could just be an open space, and this is just the standard room. It had a better feel to it. Now we get into sort of what I call the sort of the main room of the level, and I say that because this is a room that you go through a couple of times. So it's sort of like a central location that the player is going to see a few times. And because of that, I did my best to try to make sure that the room stands out. There's a few like key design choices in through here. You've got this teleportation cage, which is actually a teleport destination, not a teleporter that you can take. We have this little lower section here, and then we have this green, this sort of green sub room down here. I think to myself, like, maybe this is like a server place. I don't really know, but that's fine. Remember how I was saying that I like to do something with new monsters, how I like to almost like give them an introduction? This is, I think, the best example of this throughout all 3 of the levels that I did for Ramp, and that is my introduction to the chain gunners. So you cross a certain line def, and it spawns in the chain gunners, and they spawn in at 2 different distances, and I did that very specifically. So first of all, just having the chain gunner spawn in at all is meant to introduce the player to the chain gunner and show like, hey, the chain gunner is in this level. I understand that if you're playing Ramp, you probably are more than familiar with the monsters, and so showing you and introducing you the monsters, giving them a big flashy thing isn't necessary. But I design for people who I design with the mindset that people are playing this who might not necessarily be Doom fans, so maybe they do need an introduction to the monster. It's just good best practices when you're designing something to design for all skill levels and all fandom levels to a certain degree. So with the introduction of the chain gunner, they come in at 2 different distances, and this is meant to teach the strengths and weaknesses of the chain gunner specifically. I have 2 spawn in very close and 2 spawn in a little bit further away. The 2 that spawn in very close, that is meant to teach the player that chain gunners are squishy, because at this point the player probably has a shotgun. In fact, I can guarantee that they at least have a shotgun, if not they have the super shotgun. So you have the monster spawn in really close, they're going to just like instinctually fire off, and they're probably going to blow the chain gunner to small little bits and be like, oh, hey, that guy was pretty squishy. But then you've got chain gunners at a distance, and this is meant to show the player like, hey, chain gunners are really dangerous at a distance. So you either want to take them out as quickly as possible. You want to prioritize chain gunners when they're at a distance, or you want to close that distance and use the aforementioned fact that I taught you earlier of them being very squishy and blow them apart. So yeah, we have to go through here because the other door is locked by a blue key, so we have to go down here to go get the blue key. I realize that I'm using all my chain gun ammo when I should be shotgunning people. Okay, so we blew them apart. We've got more shotgunners. These stairs, from a design standpoint, I had a lot. These stairs, I think this like stair hallway here might have been one of the rooms that took me the longest to figure out exactly what it is that I wanted to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into... Oh, did I trigger that early? There's a line def. I believe it's... Let me take these guys out, and then I'll talk to you about what I'm doing. I put in a line def, and sometimes I accidentally trigger it early. I probably would change up how I do it if I was to redo this level. I believe there's a line def. I believe it's on this step that when you cross it, it spawns monsters back in. And I'll cover why I do that here on the return trip. But you go down into this room and yeah, okay, so I blew everybody apart. So secret, spoiler, rocket launcher in here. That is probably, I think, my most telegraphed secret, because I literally have the wall that opens bordered by the support textures. That is one thing that I will say as a designer that I struggle with, and that is telegraphing where secrets are. It's something I need to work on. It is a personal problem of mine. This room is designed with two design principles, 2 ideas in mind. I want to teach the player that jumping is a thing. Now within Doom, you can't really jump standard, but here in this level and in ramp and because of GZDoom, you can jump. So I wanted to emphasize that by having these crates, and crates are a design cliche, especially in Doom. In tech labs, you're gonna see crates all over the place. I try to usually stay away from them, but I wanted to use them here because you can have these smaller crates that you are meant to jump up on, and that is to reinforce in the player's mind that you can jump. And that's because in a moment, that jumping is going to come in real handy. So now we're in a situation here where we need to lower this bridge because toxic ooze hurts. I'm not going to go down there to show you, but just trust me, it does. And so I put that switch over there. But the problem is that switch is kind of tucked away in a corner, and I was a little worried the player might not find it, and they might find themselves lost for a little bit and wander around aimlessly, and then, finally they'll stumble upon that switch and they'll feel dumb. And I don't like my players feeling dumb. So what I did was I put a red light right over the switch that should draw the player's attention, because while we do have orange lights in this room, and this room has a general like green toxic vibe to it, red should catch the player's eye and be like, hey, look over here. And then to further reinforce that, I put the armor pickups. Now, I currently have 200 armor. However, in almost any other case, you're gonna want those armor pickups to go, because you're probably gonna be missing armor. So you're gonna come over here and be like, sweet, armor pickups. And then you'll look up and be like, hey, switch. And you flip the switch and it lowers the level. I love 3D floors. You will see that throughout the rest of this level. Remember how I was talking about how jumping is going to come in handy here? So we have these monster closets open up. This is our introduction to the Cacodemon. So say hello to the giant meatballs. So this is another situation where, again, I'm introducing a monster in a way that is meant to help you teach you how to deal with this monster. And also this is where jumping comes in, because I wanted players to know, like, hey, you can jump, because that is not a distance that you can just even sprint across. You need to jump. Oh, that is toxic. That hurts. So reinforcing that you can jump, and then giving the players a test of that mechanic. Anyways, the introduction of the Cacodemons here works really well, because while they are not the only enemy in this group, they are the focal point, because they are the biggest threat of the group. And this whole setup, the way that this room is set up, helps teach you the main mechanic of the Cacodemon, which is, of course, that they can fly. Without the ability to fly, a Cacodemon is really nothing more than just a meatball-shaped imp. So that flying is the main, like, differentiating factor between them and other enemies. And so I literally put them in a situation where they have to, if they want to get you, they have to fly. So, again, showing the player. Teaching, learning through gameplay, as it were. We picked up the blue key. We picked up another super shotgun, in case you missed the earlier one, which honestly, why would you have missed it? But we come through here. Now, this is where you would usually trigger that spawn. Again, I accidentally triggered it early. And I do that in a few different spots, because if you're going to be backtracking, I hate, like, just backtracking and having nothing to do while you're backtracking. So I'll oftentimes spawn things in. In fact, you will actually notice, if we go up here, that picking up the key actually triggered another script where I spawned in new enemies in this room. So you have something to do while you're backtracking. Not a lot of a thing to do, but at least a little bit of something to do. Now we have this door here, which is a blue key, as marked by the blue lights on either side. And this is another one of those very pretty, very ornately done up hallways. Yeah, just blasting our way through our enemies. And this is also where we get a little bit of a split choice on where to go. I will tell you that as the level designer, there is an order that I want the player to go through, but I do leave it up to you, and I don't telegraph it nearly as much. So when you come through this door, you'll look down, there's a door over there, and there's a door here. Normally, I like players to come through here, but also, look, we have a telegraphed secret spot. See how those two blue textures are two different blue textures? This one has a border, that one doesn't, and notice how the other ones don't have borders? Hey, telegraphed secret. It's the plasma gun. Open that door, blast it. The only appearance of a spectral imp in all three levels. There you go. Come around here. We've got... Now, these enemies were not in this level a little bit ago, because I was having issues with the fact that... hold on a second. While fighting in that room that overlooks this sort of toxic room, firing a gun often triggered the monsters in this room. So, all the monsters that are in this room at some point or another... By the way, the yellow key room is up there. All monsters that are in this room at some point or another spawn in. All the monsters here on this lower level that I just fought actually spawned in when I picked up the blue key. They just spawned in and were set to static and set to ambush when I came in. We also have a secret in here. This is nice, because this is my little Aliens homage. Aliens is my favorite movie. You might see the movie poster that is currently sitting here because it fell down and I haven't hung it back up yet. And this is my reference to Vasquez and Corman. We have a dead space marine, and we have a little bit of goo from another dead space marine who presumably was exploded by a grenade. Yeah, the scene where the two of them die in the ventilation shaft.
You always were an asshole, Corman.
I just, you know what? I was just like, I was building this room out. I was like, I want to put something there. I'll put a ventilation shaft. And then I was like, Aliens reference. Let's do it. So now we cross this. I I don't mean to float my own boat, but I love the like toxic waterfalls and the drain pipes emptying in, which we'll talk a little bit more when we get into the architecture stuff. Now we have another monster introduction here. The Hell Knight gets introduced here. This one, I will say, I wish I had done it just a smidge differently. In that I wish that, because we have this light here, I wish I had another one over here, because a couple of times I've had people play through this level, and they have said that they didn't even realize that one of the monsters that spawned down here was the Hell Knight. Which means that I could do the introduction better, because if the player doesn't know what it is that they're fighting, they aren't going to learn how to fight it. Also, that's where the rocket launcher spawns outside of a secret. That is what I want the player to go over there to get the rocket launcher specifically. This room in here, it has no monsters. No monsters, no puzzles, no switch to flip, nothing in here. This room is my little bit of a breather for the player. It is important while designing playable spaces to have an area where the player can just take a breath, even if they're only running through this room. In fact, most people run through this room within seconds and don't even realize that there was nothing in that room, but it's still good to give them a beat. So I purposely left that room empty. Also, it's a small enough play space that I didn't really think that the player was going to have a real great time if there was combat in there. But it just is. So that's where the plasma rifle spawns regularly. We have a teleporter over here. Notice, I want you to take notice of something. There is nothing in front of that teleporter. It's one of those things where the player comes in, they might notice that there's a teleporter over there, but they probably didn't. Also, I want you to notice something. You see in the yellow card room, there's something fancy in there now. We'll get to that in a moment. Coming along here, we're going to pick up another blue armor. We're going to pick up the red key, and this spawns in our introduction to the Pain Elemental. It's actually the only Pain Elemental in the entire level. I believe the second level that I made, Incursion Point, has a few Pain Elementals, but not many. That is an enemy that I don't really like using because, to be honest with you, I don't think the Pain Elemental is fun to fight. And for me, I would rather, like, I want to face off against enemies that are fun. I don't believe that something being a bit of a bullet sponge is all that fun. Lost Souls also suck. Notice now that there is a health pack spawned there. About 120 ticks after the last enemy in that last encounter spawns, that health pack spawns in. And that is specifically to draw the player's attention over here to this teleporter, because this teleporter allows them to backtrack without actually having to backtrack, because it puts us in the main room here, because we have the red key now, so we can go to the exit door. Also picking up the red key spawned in more enemies in this hallway. Again, backtracking, give your players something to do. So it also spawned in that pinky. Did I get all the secrets? Where's my secret counter? I did. I'm not used to the alternate GZDoom heads up display. So yes, I believe it was picking up the blue key spawned in addition to spawning in the enemies in there, also spawned in a BFG here. That is because it's the only weapon I hadn't given players yet. So I was like, you know what? They can have a BFG. And also, this is about to happen. Our sort of end of the level boss spawns in a Baron of Hell. On lower difficulty levels, we don't get Hell Knights. And in fact, I think on the lowest, don't quote me on this, but I believe on the lowest skill level, it spawns in a Hell Knight instead of a Baron entirely. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong there. But this is our end final room. We have this nice portal here. We run up and we run into it, and the level is done. So that's a playthrough. Let's jump in without monsters and take a look at some of the architectural designs and some of the other, like, the other things that aren't directly gameplay related that I can talk about, so that we can get a little bit more of a feel of sort of my decision-making process while actually designing the layout of the map. Okay, so we are here in the map. First thing I want to draw attention to is the music of the level, which I composed using rhythmic, some music creation software I got on Steam back in like 2013 or something. I've had it for a long time and never really used it. But I sat down and I wanted to do something very Aubrey Hodges-y, very PlayStation Doom, very ambience focused. I did all the music for all 3 of the levels, just entirely off of samples and synths that the program came with. So there you go. This first room here, I wanted it to be very tech feeling, so we went with the blue walls and everything. And the teleporter in, you might recognize these first couple of rooms. They may visually seem very familiar to you. That is because they themselves are sort of an homage to Quake. Doom was the first game that I ever played, but I often say that Quake was the first game that I ever loved. So I carry a little bit of it with me everywhere I go, and this room and the next room, this hallway here, kind of a representation of that. They aren't one for one, but they very much resemble the first level of the first episode of Quake. So we come in here, we have, this level is almost entirely lit by dynamic lights. I do use some sector lighting just to balance things out, but for the most part, it's dynamic lights. And I will say that this hallway here was the hardest one to get not being bathed in darkness. I actually added in these wall lights here specifically so that there would be some amount of light in the middle here. Because with this being a slanted ceiling, I couldn't put a standard ceiling fan like that, so I put wall lights. Coming in through here, first of all, I want to draw attention to something you might have noticed. My doors are trapezoids. That was actually something that I figured out how to do. I'm not going to say that I was the first person to do it, but I know that I figured it out on my own. I didn't watch like a video or anything on how to do trapezoids, because you might think like, oh, it's, you know, you have your 2 border segments and then you have your door track and your door sector here. That's not difficult or anything. Actually, now that I look at it, the door track texture is off center. But when you do that and you use the door script, the door action, with slanted borders like this, because the door goes to the nearest ceiling is sort of how it works. It's actually 8 units, 4 or 8 units below the nearest ceiling. With slanted borders on the edges like this, when I went to open the door, it would go up like a unit, and that's it. And so the door wouldn't open. So what this door is you have a 16 unit wide border on either side, and then the inner door part is 16 units. However, the door itself is only 14 units wide, because on either side there is a 1 unit wide buffer zone that is raised up, that is not border. So the door, when it goes up to however many units below that buffer zone on either side of the door. And when the door is closed, you can't tell it's there. You just can't. You can't tell that there's a 1 unit space. But it allows us to do these nice trapezoid door. Why did I do a trapezoid door? I don't know. I thought it looked cool. That's literally it. I was playing Quake 2 one day, and it has trapezoid doors like standard and all their tech-based stuff. And so I was like, oh, that looks cool. And I went in and I tried to figure out how to do it within Ultimate Doom Builder, and yeah, there it works out. As I said, this room is sort of a visual homage to the first room in Quake. In that one, you have like these alcoves on either side, and these platforms here aren't 3D floors. They're just standard like raised segments, but it's fancy and it's flashy. And this secret right here is actually in basically the same place as a secret in that first Quake level. So yeah, there you go. We got a chain gun, or chainsaw, sorry. So yes, we have these lights, which are actually 3D floors, because I want them to sort of stick out, and I didn't want to like recess a light and then use a separate texture. That's me kind of getting around the limitations of the Doom level, of the Doom engine, to do that a little bit. And we see that throughout. You see it again right here, where I'm using 3D floors to make like accent pieces. Again, another trapezoid door. This one is a little bit different in design, but still functions. Now, we have a situation here where we pick up the yellow key and we can look out into this room. The exit door is right here, but it's a red key door. So when you pick up the yellow key, you can actually, if you know that it's there, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen like you can see me pointing. The red key, you can just barely see it off in the distance on the other side of the room. When I was building this level, I hadn't yet put in the toxic fog. And so you could see the red key very clearly from where you pick up the yellow key. Now with the green fog, it's a little bit hard. I might have toned down the green fog, or maybe made it so that when you approach this, the green fog lessens. I don't know if you can do that with ACS scripting. I've never experimented with that, but maybe I can figure out a way to do that. But as it is, you know, because I know the red key is there, I can see it. And maybe if you're very observant, you'll be able to see it. But as it is, this little alcove also, by the way, I think is one of the last, definitely was the last piece of this room that I designed, but I think it was one of the last pieces overall that I designed, having this little jutted out, because originally it was just a flat wall and it had a window in it, but I wanted like a little bit of an alcove. So picking up stuff. I don't need to pick up stuff. There are no monsters here. Going down here, back through, we have this hallway. This hallway was another situation where I was playing Quake and I saw a design element that I really, really liked, which was non-rectangular hallways. These hallways that sort of almost had these concave little segments, these sort of bits that go in. And I liked it a lot. So I copied it. I just took like the architectural cue and ran with it. Because I thought that it looked cool. And this archway sort of just breaks up the hallway a little bit and makes it so that it's not just like one long continuous like tube. It's good aesthetically, just kind of break that up a little bit. You have an archway, which this is the second archway. I didn't talk about it the first time, but I need to get better at making archways. Like, it's still very boxy. And I've seen in some Doom maps some very beautiful, very meticulously made arches, and I just haven't played with them enough to really get them looking very nice. So coming down here, I already talked about the wall thing. So pick up the super shotgun. Yeah, everything's looking good. Oh, right over here, I will point out that I do have a elevator call switch, even though I'm fairly certain it is like physically impossible to like throw the switch, sending the elevator up, and get off the elevator before you're already blocked off. But just in case something screwy, you glitch through or whatever, pushing that to be able to call the elevator down is nice. Another trapezoid door coming over here. Again, this being sort of a central room, I wanted it to be memorable. I wanted it to be something that the player, like, that it was seared into their mind a little bit. This here, again, we have use of 3D floor just to give a little bit of a design element to break up this green texture a little bit, just to sort of make it look nice. It tickles me so much doing like keyboards and raising up monitors and things of that nature, giving some 3D depth to something like that as opposed to just a texture on a flat. It doesn't impress anybody, but it makes me happy. Coming up here, we go in here. Also, I personally really, really like these sort of like breaker boxes or something like that, kind of sort of sticking out of the floor. Again, use of a 3D floor just for sort of giving it an interesting look, for detailing, for making things a little bit more interesting to look at. Then we come here to this staircase. Now with the staircase, I ran into a similar problem, because again, using dynamic lights and things, I ran into a similar problem that I did with the first slope, where because I had a slanted ceiling, I couldn't do a light like that in the middle of the stairs. And I was just like, you know what? I need something to make this staircase pop, to make it look good, to make it look fancy. So I did these sort of, embedded lights, these lights that are into the wall. And honestly, I think since I did that, like I was a little iffy on like, this ain't gonna work. But since I've done that, I think this might be one of the cooler looking rooms in the entire level. Just because it looks like that. We have this nice little alcove here, which again is just detailing and gives the player a little bit of a space to have a shootout with some monsters. More repeating with the embedded lights. Go down here, and then we come into the sort of storage toxic waste room. In here, again, I already talked about the jumping stuff. I love these floating platforms up here with all the boxes on them. There's one there and there's one there. Again, it just makes the whole space feel a lot more full than when I didn't have those. Because I didn't have those at first, and I was like, it feels like it's missing something. And it very, very much was. So coming along here, I already talked about the switch. Bringing down the 3D floor. Yeah, I already basically talked about these areas, so you already know what it is to know. Oh, here's a fun fact. A fun detail that you probably won't notice. The toxic sludge here is not just flat. It actually has depth. It's like it hits you at like about the ankle. Does that do anything? No. And you'll notice that later on when I do that toxic waste again, I don't do that. I just thought it was neat at the time. More floating, more 3D sectors with the lights. Excuse me. Coming through here. Also, these lights here are something that I've done in levels for a while that I've made. It literally is just, I believe it's a 56 tall like sector with the light texture on it, and then dynamic lights around it. It looks good. That's like, at least I think it looks good. It fits with the vibe. And then these are just 16 tall, or 32 tall. Nope, 16 tall, right? Yeah, because they're half of this cube texture, and that cube texture is 32. Anyways, coming through here. I'm a stickler for like making sure that textures line up, and so I think about everything in multiples of 8, just to make sure that things line up as best that I can. There are some situations where it can't be helped, but for the most part, it is what it is. Yeah. So again, I already showed off my aliens homage. This came about because the texture that the front of the wall that raises up, I just thought looked cool, and I was like, that looks like a ventilation grate or something. And so I put that on, and I was like, I'm gonna make a ventilation shaft. And then, yeah, that just came about how that is. Yeah, and then we have this room, more use of 3D floors and all that fancy stuff. I like my little like fence here to stop the player from just running off, because this stuff does hurt. Not a lot, but just enough to be annoying. We have a little bit of a roof here. It's a bit of a slanted roof. It's just more detailing stuff to make this area a little bit more interesting than just run over here and there's, a platform or whatever. Something that you can see the best from down here, but honestly, you can't see all that well once I put in the toxic gas, is actually the detailing on the underside of these platforms, where there's like support beams put in. There's 2 there with a central beam there, and that smaller one there has 1 support beam. It's something that when I put it in, I was like, man, that looks really cool. And then I put in the green fog, and you could barely see it. But, it's there. It makes me happy. It doesn't serve any gameplay purpose, but it makes me happy. And that is all that matters. Coming through here, blah, blah, blah. Again, I already talked about this room sort of being breathing room. So let's talk about our little sludge tubes. They tickle me. One of the first levels that I ever made, I did these sludge tubes, but at the time I didn't know how to do 3D floors. So I did the top little lip, and then the tube, and then the liquid just came out of the center of the tube. There was no underside lip at the bottom of the tube. And now that I am a master in 3D floor foo, I've started putting those onto my tubes, and I just think they look great. Personally, not to toot my own horn, but I think they look really nice. Also, you can see into the space that the goo is coming out of, and I like that, like, it's like falls down, comes out, and then falls down again. And the hole is, and in case you're curious, is small enough that even though you can make this jump and land on the toxic ooze fall, it is small enough that you can't fit through. Although actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if I have, I'm gonna turn on God mode. I don't know if I've tried to climb in while crouching. Oh, you can crouch in, but then there's nothing for you. So yeah, other than, you know, if you don't have God mode on, pain, and because again, goo hurts. So let's backtrack some more. I've basically talked about the level. You've basically seen all that there is now, except for the end room. I will talk a little bit about that. So as I said, this map is the first map of 3 that I submitted to Ramp this year. And each one of the maps begins as the last level ended. So when you sit down to play Incursion Point, which is the second map of the 3, look for this sort of portal structure. It will be immediately behind you because the level does end as we walk through it. Yes, that is a liquid texture on the wall. Again, it's a little bit of like a Quake homage because Quake has that teleporter sort of effect, a teleporter texture, that sort of black, almost like television static look. And that's actually a liquid. At least it's treated the same way as a liquid within Quake mapping. Like if you apply that texture to something, it has the same effect applied to it as just a body of water does. So using a liquid here to sell that same effect, I don't know, it just felt right. And then yeah, you touch actually a line in front of that texture and the level ends. Yeah. So that is the Dimensional Gateway. Some of my thoughts on it, some of like the little design things that I, was deciding upon as I was making the map, all that sort of thing. A little bit of a commentary playthrough of it and a look at it. I would highly recommend going to check out Ramp. Submissions are closed, but you can now download the mega-WAD and play everybody's levels. And I've played a whole bunch of them. And there's some absolutely fantastic work in there. There's some incredibly talented mappers who, put in the time and the effort to make levels for this project. And, if you're a Doom fan and if you've watched this entire video, you probably are. You'll probably appreciate a lot of what people do. There's a lot of very inventive ideas in there. So highly recommend you go check it out. There will be a link down in the description, as well as a link to DavidXNewton's YouTube channel. DavidXNewton is a guy who puts on Ramp, and he is doing level by level playthroughs of all of the levels. I believe he's actually taking a vacation as I record this, but when he gets back, he's going to continue that. He's going to play through all of them, give his thoughts, his sort of takes on it. And it's just wonderful. He's the guy that I learned to map from, at least to do Doom mapping from. I've been doing game design and development for a long time, but I'd never dabbled in making levels for Doom, but I learned from him. And now it's one of my favorite things to do. So, jump down there to the links, check that out. If you like this video, if you want to see more of this, as I said, I do have 2 more maps that I made for Ramp that I'm thinking I will probably do a video like this for. Just playing through them, breaking them down, giving you my thoughts on it. So, if those come out, check it out. Let me know if you want those. Give me a like, leave a comment, all that sort of stuff. Subscribe to the channel, the usual YouTuber stuff. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Go out and create something that you're proud of. Or you know what? Just create something because, doesn't matter if it's good, bad, ugly, beautiful, doesn't matter. Just create and have a good one.